Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of At You and I. I'm your host, Katie Wohlford, and today we are joined by three hardworking ladies. Our first guest is Niko Harkin, who is currently a professor and the director of internships at the Department of Communications and Media at UNI. Not only that, she is also a small business owner. Thank you for coming in, Nikki.
Thank you for having me.
So what made you decide to go into education?
Well, I actually have always wanted to be a teacher. Even since I was a little girl, I can remember being in the classroom like in first grade, and at the end of the year I would ask my first grade teacher for all of the worksheets. And then in the summer I'd line up my stuffed animals and give them the worksheets. So I played school from a very early age.
My sister and I did the same thing when we were younger too.
Yes.
So why did you decide UNI out of all the other schools?
To come here as a student. Yeah. You know what? I don't really know. Probably because I just wanted to be a teacher, and of course, you know, UNI is a teaching school historically. So I never really wanted to go anywhere else. I checked out a couple other small schools, but this is definitely where I wanted to land. I had also been really active in high school speech, and so had been here several years for Allstate, and so was pretty familiar with the campus.
That makes sense, yeah. So what does being director of communication internships entail?
So what I do is I work with students once they have obtained their internships, and we do quite a few different things. We track hours, but we also have an entire curriculum that goes with the internship program called the Next Step series, in which we prepare students for that transition out of higher education. So they'll learn about things like health insurance, how to engage in a job search, organizational culture. You know, when they get on the job, it's a very different culture than being in school.
Yeah, it's a great program.
Thanks.
So what are some examples of interesting internships that you've seen here at UNI with the students?
Yeah, so they just do such a variety of things, and it seems like, you know, I've been doing this for 15 years, so you think that it would be really difficult for a new internship to happen, one that I haven't heard of, but it happens all the time. So one of the things that I find particularly exciting is that we require students to find internships on their own, so I don't place them in an internship. And so what that ends up happening for me, what that means is that I get to meet different industry professionals and learn about different businesses that students are involved in. And so I find that to be really an exciting part of the internship, is that students really get to carve out their own path.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to switch gears just a little bit here. You have a small business. Can you tell us a little about that?
Sure. So I have a small baking business where I do cupcakes and cookies, mostly for friends and family, and maybe some neighbors. And it started as just a hobby. I've been baking my whole life. And one of my friends was getting married, and she said, you know, hey, would you make cupcakes for my wedding? And I said, well, I will do it, but you can't pay me. I will just do them as a gift for you, but then you're not going to get anything off of your gift registry. So, and people loved them. And so then I thought, well, I don't know. And then a couple other people saw that I had done that, and it's just turned into a nice, a nice little small business that I don't want to do it big, right? I don't want to have a storefront because I am not interested in getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and making buttercream. So I really get to pick and choose what I'm making and who I'm making it for, and the time that I'm using to do that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great kind of business strategy right there.
Yes.
So we visited Nikki at her house, where she showed us some of her essential oils as well as shared some baking secrets with us. Let's take a look.
I started in the business of essential oils about 5 years ago because a friend of mine had actually reached out to me. My son was having some trouble sleeping, and she thought that they could be really helpful. And I was an absolute non-believer. I thought that, you know, there's no way that these little bottles and the smoke coming out of this machine are going to help, and it turns out they did. And so I jumped headfirst into getting essential oils for our own family, and really replacing a lot of the products that we use to have more natural types of products, more plant-based products, for a lot of reasons: environmental, sustainability, even that, you know, the purposes of health, you know, in our house. I started my baking business by complete happenstance. I would bake a lot throughout college, and then about probably 8 or 9 years ago, I had a good friend of mine who said, hey, would you bake some cupcakes for our wedding? And I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And so I started to experiment after I did my friend's wedding with some different cupcake flavors, and just kind of started finding some winning combinations, and really just started posting on Facebook. I'm, you know, like, hey, anybody want to try these? because I actually find baking to be very therapeutic and very relaxing. And when I'm sad, I'll bake. When I'm upset, I bake. I do all my baking in my own kitchen. I am not licensed, and so I don't sell like to markets. I really just sell to family and friends. I started that, and then I had someone that asked me if I would make them some cutout sugar cookies, which by the way is my least favorite thing to make, but I was like, sure, I'll do that. So here I am also in the cookie business, but I'm gonna give away one of the secrets for any of you who love to make cut out, roll out sugar cookies is that you have to get a rolling pin that looks like this. Select the thickness of your sugar cookie. When you go to roll, your dough will only be this thick. So it automatically will roll all of your dough at the same thickness level, and that has been a for real time saver.
So, kind of talking about some of those cupcakes that you mentioned, you brought in some of them. Can you tell us a little about them? Which ones these are?
So this is the s'more cupcake, probably one of the more popular cupcakes. And there's kind of a funny story. So it has a graham cracker base and then a chocolate cake. And then the top is actually a homemade marshmallow cream, which is essentially just whipped up. Well, you heat egg whites and sugar together, throw some vanilla, and then just whip it until it has stiff peaks. The funny thing is the first time that I tried the marshmallow cream, I had some on a spatula. I took it down to my daughter who was sleeping, and I kind of jostled her a little and like stuck it on her lips, and she then grabbed the spatula out of my hand. I was like, what is that? So it's one of those magical things that I bake a lot of things that are delicious, but that's one of those things that I made, and I legitimately was like, wow, that's really good. So yeah, and then it's just toasted with a little propane torch, and then topped with a piece of graham cracker and a Hershey bar.
Yeah. Oh, they look amazing. So while we were on location, you shared that you started baking with your grandma when you were young. Can you tell us more? Do you have a favorite memory?
Yeah, I have lots of favorite memories. So I spent a lot of time with my grandma when I was young, and the first pie I made, I was 4. And so my grandma had an apple tree. I grew up on a farm, and we farmed with my grandparents, who also obviously had farm. And they had a big apple tree. And so when the apples would fall, we didn't want to waste those. Waste not, want not. And so we'd pick up all of those, etc. apples, cut out the bad spots, peel them, and prepare them for pies. And because we were a farm family, we had lots of workers that would come to help bale hay or do lots of other odd jobs. And so we essentially would do, it used to be called like put up, which meant you'd put things in the freezer, you can things. And so we'd put up like 30 to 40 pies. And my mom would take some, my great aunt would take some, my grandma, so we would have fresh apple pie all throughout the winter.
So how has your small business of selling essential oils and baking delicious treats affected your life?
And the two actually marry each other in odd ways. So there's peppermint oil in some of my like peppermint cupcakes and peppermint icing. I actually use lemon oil in my lemon cupcakes and my lemon buttercream, and it really enhances the flavor, really gives it this sort of depth that's hard to get with just like squeezing a lemon or using the rind of a lemon. So they marry, but also it's given me something to take my time. In some ways it's made me a better teacher because I have other things in my life to think about, right? So I'm very focused when I'm at work because, I may have to go home and bake 60 cupcakes for someone. So,
Yeah, so you have a lot on your plate.
I'm not good at sitting still, or I get bored really easily. I move a lot. Even when I'm in the car. My husband often talks about he loves to take me for car rides because it's the only time he can get me to sit still.
Yeah. So do you have any advice to someone who's busy and has a lot to juggle?
I think list making is really important, keeping track of all of the things that you need to do. But I also think that there's real value in thinking about when you're going to actually do the things. I think we have a tendency to know, like, here are all the things that I have to, do. But when am I actually going to do them? I hope that makes sense. I think is really important in sort of planning and organizing and strategizing your week and thinking about, I know one of the things I try to teach students, if you have 3 assignments due next week, but not a lot due this week, maybe this is the week you do one of those assignments, so next week you only have 2. And to really think about, how do we strategize our time and the tasks that we need to accomplish.
Yes, that's one of the things I'm trying to learn right now. Yeah. So lastly, what does your future look like with your small business?
I think just how it is. I have a lot of people. We live by a very small town. We live by Shell Rock, and lots of folks, want me to start a bakery. And I just, I like it just the way it is. I just have enough that it's fun for me to do. I also I stole this term from my friend Deb, who calls it procrastinating. So often if I want to procrastinate, or if I don't want to do something, I end up baking. And so that's, I really am just at where I'd want to be. If I got any bigger, I definitely would need to get licensed. I don't feel comfortable selling in real public spheres because of that, because it's against the law, essentially. So yeah, I like it just kind of where it is. It's just enough to give me a little extra spending money, but not too much that it adds a bunch of stress to my life.
Yeah, a perfect balance.
Perfect balance, yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Nikki. And if you are a UNI student looking for an internship, contact Nikki at nicole.harkin@uni.edu. Don't forget to check out Nikki's essential oil website at www.dripdroplover.com. And if you want some sweet treats at your next event, find Nikki Harkin on Facebook. Up next, we will be bringing in Julianne Gassman and Lauren Fink. Before that, though, we have an important public service announcement.
Look how cheap it is.
Go for it, Steph.
Be careful what you buy online.
It's finally here.
Counterfeit products are illegal. They are fake and can be damaging to you, your property, and your wallet.
Go, 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 go!
It looks real, but I don't have a good feeling about this.
Whoa, no, get out!
Go!
Buying fake products can cost you the health of your face, skin, and eyes, or scar you for life. Real products are tested for safety. Buy the brand. Protect yourself. This message is brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council and the United States Patent and Trademark Office.
You're smart. Buy smart.
Go for real.
Go for real.
Go for real.
Hello, and welcome back to At UNI. Before we move on to our next guest, we want to showcase another segment, Binge-Worthy.
Welcome back to Binge-Worthy. I'm your host, Zach Cochran. And on Binge-Worthy, we talk about shows that you may or may not have heard about and determine if they're worthy of your binge time. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Master of None, directed by Aziz Ansari and Alan Yang on Netflix. This dramedy series follows Aziz Ansari's character, Dev, as he goes through New York City becoming an actor. Along the way, we meet some of his close companions and many other memorable characters that I wish I could tell you about, but then I'd be spoiling the show. Now, something that this show does really well is they talk about social issues like racism, sexual identity, sexual harassment, religion, immigration, ethical problems, personal ethical problems, literally you name it, and there's a 30-minute episode about it. Now with this series, what they do well compared to other series is they make these episodes actually really entertaining. I think what other shows really lack is it feels forced to the audience, not with Master of None. These social issues are the episodes. They carry the show, and they drive them home in a really original and fun way. The humor is great. The cinematography, I think, is very underrated in this show. We get a lot of thought-provoking questions, different editing and shot selections that don't follow a bland pattern, and just a really original show. Now, the first season aired in 2015 with 10 episodes with a runtime of about 30 minutes. And this follows into season 2 when it launched in 2017 with another 10 episodes. Now, there's been a long wait for the third season of Master of None, and it finally drops in the summer of 2021. Sadly, though, fans would consider this season very disappointing. Titled Master of None presents Moments of Love, we follow Denise's character with her partner Alicia as they get married. We follow the ups and downs of their relationship, and what was once a fun, energetic, thought-provoking show has turned into a serious drama. Now, this once Emmy and Golden Globe winning show has taken a major dive on review sites, but we're still gonna give it a 9 out of 10. If you don't watch the third installment. I can't even call it a third season. It just doesn't relate to the show at all, really, and just doesn't feel like it belongs. That being said, if you do watch the third installment, we're gonna have to give it a 7 out of 10. Plain and simple, it's just disappointing. Like I said already, which was once an original thought-provoking show, is clearly not there anymore. Get comfy though, because this will turn into one of your favorite shows. Just maybe do yourself a favor and turn it off after season 2. I'm Zach Cochran, and this has been Binge-Worthy.
Welcome back. So joining us now is Julianne Gassman and Lauren Fink. Julianne is the Director of Community Engagement at the University of Northern Iowa, and Lauren is the Director of the Volunteer Center of Cedar Valley. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So, Julianne, you are a professor in the Department of Health, Recreation, and Community Services. What is it like juggling your time between community engagement and being a professor?
Wow, you're going to just start with a really tough question.
Yeah.
Time management. Actually, I've been juggling now for a couple of years, so I have a pretty good flow during the week. I teach one course in the department, and then most of my time is spent thinking strategically and about community engagement and the intersection between the university and the community. So I think I have it down, although that sometimes can be a struggle when you're sort of trying to figure out how to give your time in two places.
Yeah, and there's always that balancing act.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You also are an author of numerous books and publications in the area of nonprofit management. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, actually, the work that I've done in the classroom and in my area of research is really what led me to think about starting an Office of Community Engagement at UNI. That research really looks at nonprofit organizations and actually more recently the intersection between student groups and students on a college campus and their intersection with nonprofit organizations, sort of project-based work. I think it's a nice intersection when students are working on a project or thinking about their learning, but they can attach it to a project that's really happening in the community. And so we do a call to nonprofit organizations and figure out what projects, and then students can select that. And some of my research really looked at the impact on student learning when they're doing those sorts of projects. So it's been pretty interesting. And while it was more nonprofit management focused at the start, it really sort of led my path into community engagement work more broadly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so Lauren, can you tell us about your job at the Volunteer Center of Cedar Valley?
Sure. Well, you know, at the Volunteer Center, we're here to really connect people with opportunities to serve, and we do that in such a variety of ways, but I think one of the biggest is knowing that there are people who are out there wanting to get involved in volunteering, and we partner with about 220 different nonprofit organizations in the community. And so one of my roles at the Volunteer Center is really to talk to people, find out what their passions are, figure out ways to get them connected to organizations in the community so that missions can continue to be accomplished.
Yeah, that's awesome. How can students utilize this service here at the university? Because I believe your office is here in Mocker.
We do have an office here on campus at UNI, in addition to our main headquarters, I guess, in downtown Waterloo. But our office on campus is in partnership with the Office of Community Engagement, and people can come and find us on Mondays and Thursdays in the Union. We're there from about 8 until 4:30, and really it's an opportunity for students, staff, and faculty to come and find opportunities, talk to our staff person, learn a little bit more about how they can get involved, not only here on campus, but all throughout the community with community service opportunities.
Nice. All right, so we have a video of Lauren at the Volunteer Center, so let's take a look.
Hi, Emily. What brings you to the Volunteer Center of Cedar Valley's office today?
Hi, I'm just looking for some volunteer opportunities. I'm a junior here, and I just kind of want to be able to add some resume boosters and just get some more experience in volunteering.
That's really great. Well, you know what? We have our online database through the Volunteer Center of Cedar Valley. We partner with about 220 different nonprofit organizations here in the Cedar Valley community. So why don't we take a look and see if we can find something that interests you?
Okay, that sounds good.
Hi, Chiquita.
Hi, how are you today?
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Thanks for stopping by the Volunteer Center's office here on campus at UNI. You know, I'm curious to know, why do you think it's so important to have faculty and staff involved in service experiences throughout the whole community?
I believe it's important for faculty and staff to lead by example. We should not, and it's not a good practice to ask our students to do things or participate in commitments that we are not willing to do. When we do what we're supposed to do and we lead by example, others will follow.
So college students are constantly trying to build their resumes to get ready for the future. How can volunteering help with this?
You want me to take that one?
Sure, you can take that one.
Well, I just think that the opportunity to gain skills is so important. And so getting out there and finding volunteer opportunities and making connections allows students to gain new skills such as leadership opportunities, ways to act in a professional setting, learning about things that they can build their resume with. But even more so than that, I think the networking that comes from volunteering is probably one of the most important aspects of getting students involved in different service opportunities. I mean, I've seen countless times we've helped connect students to opportunities because they've had, class required credit needs. Maybe they've had 3, 5, 30 hours that they've had to accomplish. They get connected to an opportunity at an organization that turns into maybe an internship opportunity once they're done with those hours, which then turns into a part-time position. And I've even seen students become full-time employees of organizations that they just started with because they had a classroom requirement to do so.
Yeah, and networking is so important nowadays. So what are some cool examples of volunteer opportunities that you've seen students have in the past?
Gosh, we've seen so many great ones, I think, and you've had a lot of students get involved in different volunteer opportunities. But the ability for students to go into organizations and have those hands-on experiences, whether it be at some of our larger organizations like the Northeast Iowa Food Bank or Operation Threshold, or maybe they're connecting to some smaller things that are happening in our community. I just think that for a student to be able to take where their passions are, whether it be because it's their education, what they're learning, and put that practice to use, or it's a passion that they just have personally. I mean, I think there's just so many ways that they can do that.
We also think about creating these kinds of experiences in the classroom, and we work a lot with faculty to think about partnering with an organization or a business, a small business or an agency in the community, so that volunteerism comes through the classes and is connected to the learning. And there has been so many different projects. There was an art class one year that partnered with retirement and nursing home, and they did portraits of the residents at the nursing home, which made them feel so special and so seen. And then they had an art exhibit, and they invited those residents to come. That's one example that sort of volunteerism was actually directly linked to some learning that was happening in a classroom. There was another environmental class where they were sharing stories and working with the Blackhawk County Conservation group, and then they put those stories about conservation and environmental components to think about in a book with reflections by the students. And so there's so many examples, not only individual volunteer opportunities, but experiences that are happening in classes across campus.
Nice. I really like some of those. Some
Yeah.
great opportunities.
Oh, there, and those are just two examples. I think we have, so in the last 5 years, we've had about 56 professors partner with different agencies, and all of them, so I have 56 stories to tell you, but we don't have that much time.
Yeah.
And we have thousands of students that have come
Yes.
through the Volunteer Center, whether it be through the UNI Volunteer Fair, just stopping by the office as well. So lots of great opportunities have happened.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now you both work in jobs that impact the community in a positive way. What advice do you have for people who want to get involved in their community?
Well, one thing I think is we're all very busy, right? We're busy in a lot of different ways, and it feels sometimes like, well, I will get more involved when I'm not so busy. And I would say just take the plunge, right? And there are lots of different ways. I would say call the Volunteer Center. They can help direct that passion. But there's lots of different ways, through schools, through churches, through a lot of different ways to think about how you can give, through serving on a board of directors. We actually just started that program where we're asking organizations in the community, as well as UNI faculty, staff, and students, if you're interested in serving on a board, or you're interested from someone at UNI being on your board, and we're making those connections now. So service doesn't have to always look like what we might think about, but all of these organizations always also need people to be making decisions in a boardroom and governance in that way.
Nice.
And you know, the number one reason people don't get involved in volunteer opportunities is because they're not asked. And so ask a friend to come along with you next time you're jumping in there and diving in and taking an opportunity at an organization, because all you have to do is ask them and they'll come along with you.
Yeah. So besides, you know, coming to see you guys, how would you like get that process started? I know you say like trying to find their interests and everything, but what's kind of the next steps after finding out what they're interested in?
Well, if a student comes to us and is finding opportunities, you know, we find something that they think they're interested in, we connect them with the organization and then allow them to take it from there. They have conversations. The student might learn about what the you know, interview process or application process might look like, if there's training or onboarding that needs to happen for the organization. But our goal is that both parties find it to be a good fit, and that it is really driven that both of them want each other to be a part of that, and to be a team, so that it turns out to be a really good experience for both sides.
And so if they can't seem to find anything, how else do you try to like help them? You find that like one difficult client is like, oh, I don't want to do this, don't want to do this. How do you deal with that?
We sort of stay with them, right? I mean, you know, I always think, you know, just the other day when we were talking with a group who was pretty interested in serving on a board of directors, I said, for example, if we happen to mismatch you and let's just say you're at an organization that thinks about animals and the care of animals, and you happen to be allergic to animals and you don't like animals and you're not an animal lover, probably serving with that organization is not a good fit. It's not a passion. And so we just redirect, right? So ask more questions, you know, link you up with different sorts of organizations. I think everyone can find a fit, and it feels really good to be so helpful and giving back to the community. And it's also really healthy. I mean, I think there's lots of research to say people just are healthier when they feel like I've done something that matters and I'm giving back.
And then kind of finally, do you, once they get into their volunteers, do you still try to like keep up with them, being like, hey, how's the volunteer stuff going? And just kind of keep those connections with those students?
I think on campus you definitely do, right? I mean, especially when it's classroom driven and things. You know, in the community, when we're connecting, you know, somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 individuals on an annual basis, we don't keep track of everybody. But, you know, certainly there are some that come across our desks or in conversations and things that we build relationships with, and we do follow up with them regularly, or we see them out and about. And so we do like to know that things are good. On the other side of that, we work regularly with our community partners, the nonprofits throughout the Cedar Valley, providing them training opportunities and things. So we have a lot of regular communication with them. In turn, then we hear about a lot of the volunteers and the things that they're doing at those organizations. So I guess we do keep our kind of, you know, our thumbprint in kind of what's happening.
All right, well, before you leave, we'd like to show a public service announcement all about getting involved in the community.
As the world faces the challenges of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Lions recognize that kindness matters now more than ever. And Lions and Leos are finding ways to continue to serve our communities, including ordering food delivery for healthcare workers, holding story time for children online, and providing surgical masks to medical professionals and first responders. Empowering us to do more, Lions Clubs International Foundation has provided nearly $2.5 million in grant funding for COVID-19 relief. And that support continues to grow. For more than 100 years, in times of need, Lions always find a way to help those around them. And after we emerge from this, we will be stronger than ever. Visit lionsclubs.org to learn more.
Thank you so much to our guests, Julianne, Lauren, and then thank you also to Nikki for coming in today, and thank you for those tuning in at home. This has been At You and I. See you next time.